this lesson on sleep. Now, similar to your reaction to the last lesson, you probably saw the topic of this lesson and thought, well, that's obvious. If that's the case, I suppose I should respond, well, you're right, it is obvious. Along with diet and exercise, sleep is among the most marginalized and underemphasized factors that affect our emotional and physical health. And this is true for children, adolescents, and adults. Sleep deprivation has known consequences on our cognitive and behavioral functioning. We have all experienced the irritability that accompanies the need for sleep. In children, sleep deprivation does not only cause irritability, but it can also manifest as inattention, fidgetiness, impulsivity, and hyperactivity, or what we call hypervigilance. I remember the first time I witnessed the dramatic effect adequate sleep can have on overall functioning. When I was a graduate student, I worked in the Department of Pediatrics at our medical school. As part of my work in the Department of Pediatrics, I conducted developmental and medical evaluations of children from birth through 3 years of age. One day, while working with a developmental pediatrician, a 2-year-old little girl was brought in by her exhausted parents. I attempted to complete my evaluation, but the little one was impossible to assess. She was extremely hyperactive. She was very physical in her play, throwing toys, talking loudly, and having a very difficult time interacting appropriately with others, including her parents. In fact, she was so active, I was certain that her behavior increased the temperature in the room by at least 10 degrees. While talking with her parents about her typical routine, we were impressed with her parents' report that the little one sleeps 45 minutes per night. You heard that right, 45 minutes per night. The parents will lay her down and even lay down with her, but she will not sleep. When she does fall asleep, she wakes up in less than an hour and she remains very active and irritable. Her parents are unable to soothe her at all. Because of her poor sleep, the parents will work in tandem, with one sleeping for the first portion of the night and the other sleeping the second. They take shifts, staying up with the little one because her activity level leads to her getting into things that could harm her. Not to mention, she's only 2 years old, and you just can't leave a 2-year-old awake unsupervised. When we learned about this, the developmental pediatrician and I provided some support and information regarding the importance of good sleep hygiene, and the pediatrician wrote her a prescription for a sleep study. The parents, hopeful that the sleep study will reveal something useful, left the office. Although the pediatrician and I spoke about this little girl often, we did not hear anything from the parents for about 6 months, which was the typical time frame for a follow-up visit to our clinic. When we saw her on our schedule, the pediatrician and I worked out a plan for how we would deal with the anticipated examination. However, much to our surprise, we barely recognized the family. The parents looked well rested, the little one walked in the exam room holding her parents' hand, and the parents were smiling. The evaluation went well, and I was actually able to complete all of the testing that I needed to do. And during the visit, we asked the parents about the improvement. They smiled and said that they were not even going to come back because of all the improvement, but they wanted us to see the change. They said that the sleep study revealed a slight physical problem in her throat that was interfering with her breathing while she slept. It was not exactly sleep apnea, but with a simple outpatient surgical procedure, the problem was corrected. The parents, using the keys to proper sleep hygiene we provided at our initial visit, got her on a good schedule, a good routine, and it made all the difference. Once she began sleeping through the night, all of her behavioral issues disappeared. And what we thought were developmental issues resolved. It was simply the most amazing transformation I had ever seen. Since that follow-up session, and my realization of the importance of sleep, I make it a point to ask every patient that I see, every parent that I talk to about sleep. Recognizing the impact sleep had on that one little girl helped me appreciate the absolute necessity of adequate sleep. Now, in addition to the behavioral issues witnessed in the little one from my story, sleep deprivation also causes many to experience what is best described as a cognitive cloud. When we are tired, we are simply unable to plan and organize and focus our thoughts, especially when we are working out problems and trying to make decisions. We are more easily confused, and our memory system simply does not function as adequately as it does when we're rested. Simply put, our brain does not function as it should when we are sleep deprived. So we should talk a little bit about good sleep hygiene and what it really is. First, if you need it, review the previous lesson where we talked about developing a good bedtime routine. This time, as you're building the routine, I want you to consider the environment. Good sleep hygiene begins with a good environment. This should include the temperature of the room, the amount of light, and other sounds. The best sleep scenario is a cool, dark room. While some do very well in a quiet room, others prefer soft, ambient sounds or gentle classical music. Moreover, having such sounds playing at bedtime may be important to mask sounds from other rooms of the house. You will want to avoid upbeat music and lyrics that the child may start singing along to. It's important, as we're considering the environment, that we think about what the child is actually experiencing. I had a very interesting conversation one time with a couple of parents about their 11-year-old son. They reported that he would lay there for hours and not go to sleep. He would get up repeatedly, and he had a difficult time settling in what the parents seemed to interpret as just simple avoidance of going to bed. So the parents came to me and asked if I could help and find out what's going on and to try to get him on a better sleep routine. According to the parents, the child has a lot of difficulty with darkness, and so they keep lights on. And not just lights, they have the door open to his room, they have the hall light on, and they have his closet light on. Now, the way that they describe it, that's quite a bit of light. But they say that that's what he needs because he's scared of the dark. They also report that his room is further back down the hall and that there really are no other sounds, that the room is very quiet. They don't have him playing any music or any other noises or sounds. So after getting a bit of an idea from the parents about the environment, I talked to the child. Now, it's always amazing to me how rarely we actually ask the child about what's going on. They can so often provide great insight to let us know what's really going on. So I sit down, I talk with the kid. He tells me that, like the parent said, that he's afraid of the dark. Well, this child is really interested in movies. And while we were talking, and from our previous conversations, I know that he is really a big fan of Indiana Jones. We talked about how Indiana Jones, being brave and being courageous, was able to go into dark places, and he didn't mind because he knew that everything was safe and everything would be okay. And so through our discussion, we decided that we would be able to turn off the hall light, keep the light in his closet on, but just have it cracked just a bit so just a little bit of light comes out. The patient, though had never been asked by his parents about this, was just fine with this. Sure, he was afraid of the dark, but like many kids, he took as much as the parents were willing to offer. So the parents were willing to offer the hall light on, and they were willing to offer the closet light on with the closet door wide open, and so he took it. Well, as soon as we start to talk about a negotiation, he was perfectly fine with it. And so we were able to agree to turn the hall light off and just to keep the closet door open a crack. Now, the next piece was really critical, and that is, we talked about sounds. Very interestingly, this kid said that when he's laying in his bed, he can hear his parents get bowls and spoons out to eat ice cream after he and his brothers have gone to bed. Now, at that time, I didn't know how true that was, but he believed that he could hear this happening. So, I talked with the parents again, and amazingly, the parents agreed. Well, you know what? He's right, they said. It's very strange because for some reason in his room, despite the fact that it's at the end of the hallway, everything that happens in the kitchen can be heard in his room. Well, why would we not then assume that getting out bowls and getting out spoons and doing those kinds of things wouldn't distract him? Every 11-year-old would like ice cream. So if you're getting ice cream and he can hear you getting ice cream, that's going to keep him awake. So the only other addition that we made, besides changing the light situation, was to add a sound machine in his room, which the mother picked up on the way home from that session. I got a call 2 weeks later. Sleep was better. The kid was getting to sleep on time. He was laying down without any problems. The room was darker. We had the sound machine going, and all of a sudden, all the sleep issues were disappearing. Didn't do anything for the child, didn't do anything to the parent. All we did was address the environment. It's amazing what can happen if we just set up the right environment. Now, other sleep hygiene considerations actually involve things done throughout the rest of the day. Certainly you want to avoid caffeine and sugary treats in the afternoon and evening. Although you know your child best, it is best to also avoid afternoon naps. Another important consideration I encourage you to consider is what you allow and sometimes force your child to do in his bed during the day. Think about this. If you use your child's bed for timeout or punishments during the day, he is going to associate his bed with something he wants to avoid. Many parents, when punishing their child, will tell their child, "Go lay in your bed and think about what you did." These same parents are then surprised when their kid keeps getting up out of bed when he's supposed to be going to sleep. Well, if the goal is to get out of timeout, and in this situation, then out of his bed, throughout most of the day, why would you expect him to do anything different in the evening? Other parents will use a nap as a punishment. Using the same argument, why would you use something like sleep, something you hope that he will want to do in the evening, as a punishment? Doesn't it make sense that he will see sleep as a bad thing if it is used as a punishment? I also encourage parents to avoid allowing their child to play in their bed for the same reasons. When a child associates a particular place with playing, that is what he's going to expect when he's in that place. That is for sleeping. That is it. Finally, I always encourage parents to avoid electronics before going to bed. There's been a lot of research lately about the effects of blue light on our ability to sleep. Now, there is nothing special or mysterious to it. Blue light, just blue colored light, keeps us awake. We have a hormone in our body called melatonin. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard of melatonin. There's little bottles of it everywhere. But melatonin is something that our body naturally makes. It's a derivative of serotonin. But melatonin is sometimes referred to as the Dracula hormone. Now, no, it doesn't make you crave blood or anything like that. But the name comes from the fact that it is only released when it's dark outside. Our physical bodies, which are still the same primitive bodies that our hunting and gathering ancestors had hundreds and maybe thousands of years ago, respond to the environment in much the same way today as they did way back then. Our body prepares for sleep when the sun goes down and becomes alert when the sun comes up. Our biology has not evolved as much and as fast as technology. As such, electricity, which exposes us to light 24 hours a day, prevents our body from knowing when it is supposed to relax. A major contributor to this is blue light, the color of the sky when the sun is up. So, all of that to simply say, it is important that you and your child put away your electronic devices at least 30 minutes to an hour before bedtime to allow your body to acclimate to the night. Following some of these simple ideas for sleep can be very powerful in overcoming sleep deprivation. It is certainly difficult to do, as most of us want to stay up and remain active. However, it's critical that we get adequate sleep, which is at least 8 hours per night. Now, a final note about sleep. Sleep patterns change throughout our lives. It is never more noticeable than it is during adolescence. When kids reach puberty, their circadian rhythm changes, and they are, for lack of a better word, driven to stay up later at night and to sleep later in the morning. This would not be as much of an issue if it weren't for the fact that most high schools begin within the 7 o'clock hour. While some high schools have become more progressive and shifted their start times to later in the morning, most continue to have these students up early in the morning, even though their biology would prefer otherwise. As such, it is important that parents do their best to encourage their adolescents to get to bed as early as possible to increase their ability to have adequate sleep. Now, I am certainly aware that getting our kids to bed and promote good sleep hygiene is not always an easy task. Doing so can clearly have a positive impact on their behavior and emotions, but it does create sometimes a battle that we have to fight. And in this case, what is true for your child is also true for you. Making sure that you get adequate sleep, making sure that you are well rested, will help you make better decisions and cope with the challenging behaviors that you experience with your child who has ADHD. So, I hope this lesson helped provide you with some good insight and strategies for managing good sleep hygiene, not just for your child, but also for yourself. If you have any comments or suggestions or recommendations, I encourage you to provide them in the discussion section so that others can benefit from them as well. So, thanks so much for listening, and I will see you in the next lesson.